This traffic isn't the result of a car accident or a lane closure. It's not the lineup to go see Coachella or head out of town for a long weekend. No, this is the traffic every morning to drop off students at a school. And to me, this is a great example of why we need to widen our roads, add more lanes of traffic, make more room for cars, and just kidding. To me, this traffic is an example of a problem all over North America. If you look at the numbers, much more children are being driven to school and much fewer of them are walking or cycling. So for this video, I just want to understand, why is this happening? All right, let's start with some numbers. The decline in children walking or cycling to school is frankly astonishing. This change happened in most Western countries, and it happened fast. In 1969, about 48% of students walked or cycled to school in the United States. Today, that figure is about 11%. And this decline wasn't just in the US. You can find the same trend in Australia, England, and Canada. Today, the majority of students are driven to school in a car. One of the larger studies we have on this issue in BC found that 58% of 4th graders and 50% of 7th graders were driven to school by their parents. So, why should we care?
Well, it's about building character. Back in my day, we used to walk 50 miles to school through the rain, the snow.
No, this is actually a problem, and a lot of people who aren't your grandpa have done research on it. Studies have found that children who don't use active transportation are missing out on improving their health, building independence, and even doing better academically. And all students are impacted by the worse air quality caused by car exhaust around their schools. Even if you don't have kids, you're still impacted by the extra pollution, climate change, the general loss of social capital in a neighborhood, and congestion. Yes, school traffic is actually a huge contributor to overall traffic. In Metro Vancouver, school drop-offs are responsible for up to a fifth of traffic in the morning. But ultimately, there's a bigger picture here. As a society, we are generally trying to get more people to walk and cycle for a lot of reasons. And if that's what we really want, shouldn't we be concerned that the majority of children today are learning to commute on SUVs and minivans? So how do we change that? So at first, I thought the answer was obvious. Children are just living too far away from their schools, and you can blame that on suburban sprawl. You know the story. In the 20th century, most North American cities saw the growth of the suburbs, sprawling, cul-de-sac-filled neighborhoods where you have to drive to get anywhere. And sprawl is part of the story. Children are, on average, living further away from their schools. A pretty standard walking distance for children is about 1,600 meters, or 1 mile. Well, in the 1960s, nearly 35% of children lived within 1 mile from their school in the US, but by the year 2000, this had declined to just under 20%. But what I was surprised to discover is that distance actually isn't the main issue here. In fact, there are plenty of children today who live within walking distance of their schools, but still take a car to class. Take the city of Vancouver, for example. Known for its cyclists and walkable neighborhoods, its school catchment areas are designed so that every elementary student is within walking distance to their local public school. But nearly 40% of those students are still driven to school. And this is the trend you see right across the country. According to the Health, Behavior, and School-Aged Children study, only about half of students who live less than 5 minutes from their school walk or cycle to get there. So the good news is that there are plenty of children who could theoretically walk and cycle to school, but they don't. And the reason why is a bit more complicated. So we have to start with safety. Road safety is perhaps the most common concern that's brought up around children walking or cycling to school, and those concerns do have some validity. A study in Montreal found that children who walked to school were 4.5 times more likely to be injured than children being driven. For children who biked, they were 22 times more likely to be injured. Now, it's important to mention here that the vast majority of these injuries are minor. However, severe accidents can happen as well. But walking and cycling aren't inherently dangerous. The reason they're unsafe is because of cars. Here in North America, the vast majority of serious pedestrian and cyclist collisions involve a vehicle. Okay, I gotta get out of here. You'll find a completely different picture in cities that are designed to prioritize active transportation. In the Netherlands, after major improvements to the country's cycling and pedestrian networks, fatality rates for all modes of transportation have fallen to near zero levels. Meanwhile, in the United States, pedestrian and cycling fatalities are consistently higher than vehicles. Around schools, this can create a vicious cycle. When more and more students are driven to school, it makes the roads less safe for others to walk and cycle, which only compels more parents to drive. So this is a huge argument for building better infrastructure for active transportation, such as generous sidewalks, crosswalks, separated bike lanes, and traffic calming measures like bananas. Note these bananas. But of course, road safety isn't the only concern here. There are also concerns about people. Strangers, bullies, kidnappers, and other characters you hear about on the news all contribute to the feeling that walking to school is less safe.
The suspect considered extremely dangerous.
Now, child abductions and other extreme incidents are exceedingly rare, but nevertheless, it's understandable that people feel more protected from these threats when they're inside a vehicle. And with the right vehicle, you might even feel like your ego is protected as well. But with all that being said, I'm not sure that safety is actually the main issue here either, because none of those concerns, whether it's kidnappings or car accidents, are new. As terrible as they are, the statistics behind those risks haven't changed significantly over the decades. So there's something else at play here that's causing fewer kids to walk and cycle. In 2011, sociologist Markella Rutherford published one of the most comprehensive studies on how parenting expectations have changed over the past century. Analyzing literally hundreds of articles and guides on parenting over the decades, she found that since the 1970s, children have increasingly been losing their independence. For example, this parenting guide from the 80s recommends letting children as young as 6 years old walk by themselves to school, local corner stores, or a friend's home. But today, it's not uncommon for parents to face scrutiny for simply letting their children be unsupervised, such as walking home from school, taking the bus, and even playing in their own backyard. The reasons behind this trend are complex. New parenting norms, less trust within communities, media narratives, and countless other factors. But the result of all that is very clear. Parents increasingly do not want their children to leave their home unsupervised. And this brings up another really important factor: parents' commuting schedules. Unlike past decades, today a majority of households have two working parents who commute to their own jobs in the morning. And if the expectation is that children need their parents' supervision wherever they go, well, then their school commutes have to revolve around their parents' work commutes. And it's often just most convenient to pile everyone into a car in the morning. So rigid work schedules are a huge factor here. In fact, a study in Toronto found that flexible work hours could play a more significant role than even addressing safety concerns in convincing more parents to walk their kids to school. The influence of work commutes is so strong that it actually creates an interesting effect. In BC, significantly more students arrive at school by car than leaving school by car. But there's another more unsettling factor here. A lot of this has to do with money. Driving isn't cheap, and for parents who don't have the means to drive a car to work, they often have to let their children walk to school by themselves, not because they care any less about safety, they just don't have a choice. A study from Quebec found that children with lower income parents were 2 to 3 times more likely to walk or cycle to school. When you couple this with the fact that lower income neighborhoods are less likely to have pedestrian infrastructure and more likely to contain high-speed arterial roads, you quickly realize that this is a huge equity issue, and the statistics show that. A report from the CBC in Toronto found that lower income neighborhoods had 50% more fatal or serious pedestrian collisions compared to more affluent areas. To me, this is the real tragedy behind this issue. More children being driven to school makes our roads less safe for others to walk and cycle, and it's the students who don't have the luxury of choice who disproportionately suffer the consequences. Now, the purpose of this video isn't to shame people about their commuting habits. To a large extent, the decline in active transportation among kids is rooted in broader issues that aren't the fault of any one individual or parent. But what has become apparent to me is that changing this pattern seems a lot more doable than I thought. Before making this video, I assumed that reversing this trend could only be done through significant structural changes to the layout and density of our cities. And don't get me wrong, that is still very important to do. But what I've learned is that this issue is just as cultural as it is structural. There are many children right now who live within walking and cycling distance of their schools, but don't. And I think that's something we can change. We can start by simply addressing traffic safety concerns around schools. Improving certain crosswalks, roads, and intersections along school walking routes can help parents feel confident that kids on foot are just as safe as kids in cars. And the other thing we can do is to create programs that encourage a culture of active transportation among students. I partnered with TransLink to put this video together, and in the process, I learned about a variety of programs they support to do just that. For example, TransLink has partnered with the BC Ministry of Transportation and Hub Cycling to offer cycling classes in public schools, which teach thousands of students how to ride a bike each year. Then there's TransLink and the Transportation Ministry's Get On Board program to let children 12 and under ride transit for free, which has given out over 3 million free trips since its launch in 2021. But one of my favorite initiatives is the walking school bus. How it works is that an adult or older student coordinates with families to pick up their children and walk as a group to their school. And that's just the tip of the iceberg for solutions. There are many, many other programs out there that encourage active travel to and from schools. And I'd like to highlight just a couple more. First, the School Streets program, which closes down streets in front of schools to car traffic during drop-off and pickup times to create a welcoming space for children while reducing car fumes outside the school entrance. And second, Drive to 5, a program that asks parents to drop their kids off at designated locations that are a 5-minute walk away from their school. What I love about this idea is that it makes it possible for children who live further away from their schools to still participate in active travel. If you want to learn more about these sorts of initiatives, I'd recommend checking out TransLink's new TravelSmartforKids strategy, which creates a comprehensive plan to encourage more active transportation among kids 12 and under. You can find that and other resources on their website. At the end of the day, students are the next generation of citizens and commuters in our cities. And I think encouraging them to bike or walk to school could help them get started on the right foot.
Baby, when we crisscross, baby, when we crisscross.